Across the globe, businesses adopting social media more and more in an effort to capture consumers' attention in increasingly competitive markets. But a recent study shows that Australian businesses lag behind their Asian counterparts in taking advantage of this opportunity. To find out why that is, I'm joined by Futurist Mike Walsh, the author of Futurtainment and the CEO of the company called Tomorrow. Mike Walsh, welcome to the program.
Good to meet you.
Now, what are the true benefits to business adopting social media?
I think there's a disconnect in Australia between the number of people using it and the number of businesses that are actively taking advantage of it. The real advantage for businesses is finding a deeper engagement with their customers. So not just talking to them about their products and services, but listening to them about the brands that they really care about.
And how do you see that social media, that business adopting social media can benefit the bottom line? How does that translate?
Well, in very simple terms, there are a number of Australian companies now who are experimenting with e-commerce. And at the moment, if you're spending a lot of money on Google for your advertising, you can't actually translate to see how that affects the number of sales. You can maybe test how many people are coming in the store, but you don't know how that directly goes to the bottom line. The more active you're involved in the digital space and the more money you're spending and you're more actively involved in conversations on Facebook and Twitter, you can actually show how that increases your sales on your online sites.
Now, you travel the world constantly, but you spend a lot of time in Hong Kong, that's my understanding. Can you just give us a snapshot of how Asian countries are adopting new media and social media to help their businesses?
It's very interesting, and people don't realize that markets like China, with over 450 million users, are perhaps one of the most social on the planet. So companies there don't have the luxury of trying to figure out whether or not they should be involved. If they're not involved, they simply don't connect with the new generation of consumers there. And it's fascinating, partly because of the Great Firewall of China and also because some of the government restrictions. They use many different websites to us. So they don't really use Twitter, they use Weibo.
And they don't use Facebook, because when I was there it was blocked.
Correct, they use Kaixin. And they don't use Google, they use Baidu. But what's intriguing is that companies have actually evolved very sophisticated ways of engaging with consumers there. And there are literally millions of discussions every month on Chinese BBS or bulletin board sites where Chinese consumers who have now embraced capitalism discuss which brands they most want to get involved with.
Now, you mentioned China, obviously, and there's also India. China's, in the KPMG study, China registers of using about 87% of businesses are engaged in social media. India is also high, it's about 70%. Is there a difference between the Indian way of using social media and, say, the Chinese way?
In India, they're developing a very strong mobile culture. So people don't have access to as many, I guess, wired or wireless PCs as they do in China. So a lot of the social networking platforms are really going first to mobile. And it's interesting, a lot of the technology we use now came from that region. So social networking actually originated from Korea in the 90s with SK Telecom. A lot of the virtual currencies were developed by the Chinese, and the Japanese evolved the whole ecosystem on mobile we now see in iTunes. So we can really look to that region to understand where the future of social business is going to go.
And what do you think the future of social business will be?
I think the really big missed opportunity at the moment is content. So there are many CEOs in Australia who've discovered, unfortunately, the concept of likes and fans on Facebook. So you see this being raised in board meetings now where they're asking how many people now like us. If only if it was that simple, to handle marketing. What they don't realize is that there's a secret formula behind Facebook. It's called EdgeRank. It's like the old secret Coca-Cola formula that only 2 executives knew about. But in simple terms, what that means is that unless consumers are really engaged with the content that your brand is putting on Facebook, it will never turn up on their newsfeed. So the most valuable thing that Australian companies can now invest in is actually creating quality content as if they're a media company and sharing it on their social networks.
Now, Australian companies do lag their Asian counterparts in adopting new media, social media, to help their businesses. Why is that? Is it because they're suspicious of its intentions?
I think there's always a traditional conservatism in Australia. It's strange because as consumers we always embrace the latest technology, but as businesses we never want to be the first to fail. And in other cultures, this is not unique to Australia. I've been spending quite a bit of time in Turkey. Turkey is one of the most socially networked countries on the planet, but it's even further behind Australia when it comes to adoption. But there are many companies, for example, like Nokia, who don't understand why people in Turkey buy expensive smartphones and not the cheap ones they're making for that country. And it's actually all to do with anthropology. So just like Australia, there are anthropological reasons why companies are held back. In Turkey, there's an old saying, at avrat salah, which means that to be a real man, you need a horse, a woman, and a gun. And the strange thing is, in contemporary Turkey, that now translates. Everyone needs a car, which is like a modern-day horse. Everyone's now on Facebook, and there's no what better way to show how many women you know. And, of course, what's the modern-day gun but the mobile phone? So you always have to, I think, understand culture to really understand the adoption rate in different countries.
So, given that social media is such a huge kind of unwilling kind of network, what are the challenges then for business to really harness it, I guess?
The things that companies most fear when it comes to social media is the loss of control. They are very uncomfortable with the idea that consumers are now having conversations about their brands that they can't direct. But here's the problem. They're going to have those conversations with or without you. And Keith Weed, who's the CMO of Unilever, actually said that their model now with marketing is the paid, owned and earned model. So they don't buy advertising now unless it reinforces the brand properties that they own. But more importantly, that also influences the earned model, the conversations that consumers are having about their brands. So it's critical now to have a complete view of your marketing spectrum.
All right, Mike Walsh, we'll have to leave it there, but thanks for your time today.
My pleasure.